Dr. Brennan's office called on a Wednesday morning. Nothing unusual about that. I'd been seeing him every 3 months for the past 2 years since my diagnosis. High blood pressure, nothing dramatic, but enough to keep me on medication and regular checkups. What was unusual was the tone. The receptionist asked if I could come in that afternoon instead of my scheduled appointment next week. She wouldn't say why over the phone, just that Dr. Brennan wanted to discuss something important. I work as a quality control supervisor at a manufacturing plant. Steady job, decent pay, nothing fancy, but it keeps the bills paid. I told my supervisor I had a medical appointment and left after lunch. The waiting room felt different that day. Maybe it was just my imagination, but the receptionist kept glancing at me like she knew something I didn't. When they finally called me back, Dr. Brennan's usual warm greeting was replaced with something more cautious. He closed the door and sat down across from me instead of at his desk. That's when I knew this wasn't routine. I received a concerning call yesterday, he started, watching my face carefully. Someone contacted our office with information about your treatment compliance. I felt my stomach drop. Had I missed an appointment? Screwed up my medication somehow? They claimed you've been drinking heavily and skipping your blood pressure medication. The caller identified themselves as your wife and said she was worried you were heading toward a cardiac event. For about 5 seconds, I couldn't process what he'd just said. Then it hit me like a truck. That's not accurate, I said, keeping my voice steady. Not even close to accurate. Dr. Brennan nodded slowly. I didn't think so. Your blood work has been consistent, your blood pressure readings are stable, and you've never missed a scheduled appointment in 2 years. But I'm required to follow up on concerns raised by family members, especially regarding cardiac patients. I pulled out my phone. I haven't had a drink in over 2 years. I can show you my sobriety app right now. 730 days as of this morning. He looked at the app, then back at me. And your medication? I pick it up from the same pharmacy every month like clockwork. Same day, same time. I've never missed a single dose. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, but his expression remained serious. I believe you, but someone made a deliberate effort to contact this office with false information about your health. That's not a small thing. No, it wasn't. And there was only one person who would have identified herself as my wife. I'd been married for 6 years. Met her at a friend's barbecue. Dated for 8 months. Got married at a courthouse with a small reception afterward. Nothing extraordinary, just 2 people who thought they'd build a life together. The past few months had been different, though. She'd become distant, spending more time on her phone, making excuses to go out with friends on weekends. I chalked it up to work stress. She worked in medical billing for a dental practice, and they'd been going through some management changes. But calling my cardiologist's office, lying about my health, that was something else entirely. The call came from this number, Dr. Brennan said, showing me his notes. Is this your wife's cell phone? I recognized it immediately. Yes, that's hers. He leaned forward. I want to be very clear about something. False reports regarding a patient's medication compliance, especially for a cardiac condition, can be dangerous. If I had taken that information at face value without your documented history with us, it could have affected your treatment plan. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood perfectly. Someone had tried to sabotage my medical care, and that someone slept in the same bed as me every night. What happens now? I asked. Now you continue your treatment exactly as prescribed. I'm documenting this conversation and the false report in your file. If there are any more calls like this, we'll need to take additional steps. He paused. And I'd strongly suggest you figure out why your wife would do something like this. I left the office with more questions than answers. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my mind was racing. Why would she call my doctor with lies? What did she gain from this? Then I remembered something. 3 weeks ago, she'd asked about my life insurance policy. Casual question over dinner, wondered if the coverage was enough. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Now that conversation felt different. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I stopped at a coffee shop and sat in my truck for a while, thinking. Confronting her directly wouldn't give me answers. She'd just deny it, maybe claim she was worried, turn it around somehow. No, I needed to know what was actually going on before I made any moves. And that meant keeping my mouth shut and my eyes open. When I finally got home that evening, she was cooking dinner like nothing had happened. Smiled when I walked in, asked about my day. I told her it was fine, nothing special. She had no idea I'd been to the doctor's office that afternoon. Had no idea her little plan had backfired. I ate dinner, made small talk, and went to bed that night lying next to someone who'd just tried to interfere with my medical treatment. Sleep didn't come easy, But I knew one thing for certain. I was going to find out exactly what she was up to, and she was going to regret making that phone call. The next morning, I called Dr. Brennan's office before work, asked if I could stop by during lunch to get copies of any records related to that phone call. The receptionist, Mrs. Hoffman, had known me since my first appointment. Her daughter went to high school with my younger brother. "I'll have everything ready for you," she said quietly. What happened yesterday wasn't right. I arrived at noon. Mrs. Hoffman handed me a folder with copies of the call log, notes from the conversation, and the phone number it came from. Everything documented and time-stamped. "Between you and me," she said, glancing toward the back offices, "Dr. Brennan was angry about that call. He doesn't like people playing games with patient care." I thanked her and left. First piece of evidence secured. My next stop was the pharmacy. I'd been using the same place for years, small independent shop run by a guy named Vincent Walsh. I explained what happened, asked if he could print my pickup history for the past 2 years. Vincent didn't even hesitate. "Give me 5 minutes." He came back with 3 pages showing every prescription fill, every pickup date, every refill. Perfect record. Not a single gap. "Someone trying to mess with your medical care?" he asked, handing me the papers. "Something like that." "That's low. You need anything else, you let me know." Second piece of evidence secured. Back at work, I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that life insurance question 3 weeks ago. Seemed innocent at the time, but now it felt calculated, like she was checking the value of something. During my afternoon break, I pulled up my sobriety app. I'd started using it 2 years ago when my doctor first diagnosed the blood pressure issue and suggested cutting out alcohol completely. Made it easier to stay accountable to myself. Never thought I'd need it as proof of anything. 730 days. Every single one logged. Daily check-ins, milestone celebrations, notes about how I was feeling. An unbroken chain of evidence that I hadn't touched a drink in 2 years. I took screenshots of everything. The main counter, the calendar view, the detailed logs. Saved them to a folder on my phone, backed them up to cloud storage. When I got home that evening, she was on the couch watching television. Barely looked up when I walked in. "How was work?" she asked. Eyes still on the screen. "Same as always." "You?" "Fine." That was the extent of our conversation. She went back to her show. I went to the bedroom and changed clothes. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. She'd gone to take a shower, left it sitting there unlocked. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I wasn't going to ignore an opportunity either. I opened her messages and started scrolling. Most of it was mundane stuff with coworkers and friends. Then I found a conversation with someone named Brielle from 2 days ago. Still no change, my wife had written. "He's healthy as ever. It's frustrating." "Maybe you're worrying too much," Brielle replied. "These things take time." "I don't have time. The credit cards are almost maxed and Trevor keeps asking when we can be together properly." My blood went cold. Trevor, credit cards, be together properly. I kept reading. "You need to be patient," Brielle had written. "You can't rush something like this." "I know. I just thought maybe the stress would do something. His heart is the weak point, right? That's what you always hear. Stress and cardiac problems don't mix." I took photos of the entire conversation, every message. Then I kept digging. Found more messages to Brielle over the past month. Complaints about me, about our marriage, about money. References to Trevor that made it clear this wasn't just a friendship. And then, buried in a thread from 2 weeks ago, I found it. "Sometimes I think it would be easier if he just had a heart attack. Then at least it would be over and I could move on without all the divorce mess." Brielle's response: "Don't say things like that, even as a joke." Who says I'm joking? I stood there in our bedroom, holding her phone, reading words that made my stomach turn. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively hoping I'd die. The shower was still running. I had maybe 2 more minutes. I went through her other apps, found her email open, scrolled through recent messages. There was one from a law office I didn't recognize, dated last week. Subject line: Estate Planning Consultation. I opened it. Appointment scheduled for next Tuesday to discuss spousal inheritance laws and life insurance beneficiaries. I photographed that too. Then I put her phone back exactly where I'd found it, made sure the screen timeout would lock it again, and walked out of the bedroom. By the time she came out of the bathroom, I was sitting on the couch watching the same show she'd been watching earlier, acting like everything was normal. "Want anything for dinner?" she asked. "I'll order something," I said. "Not really hungry yet." She shrugged and went back to the bedroom, probably to check her phone, make sure no one had noticed her little conversation about hoping for my death. I sat there thinking about the past 6 years, trying to figure out when things had changed, when she'd stopped seeing me as a husband and started seeing me as an obstacle. Or worse, as a life insurance policy. The credit card comment stuck with me. We kept our finances mostly separate, both contributing to shared expenses, but maintaining our own accounts. I had no idea she was carrying debt, had no idea about Trevor, whoever he was, had no idea she was consulting with lawyers about inheritance. But now I knew, and I had evidence. Documented, time-stamped, photographed evidence. The question was what to do with it. I could confront her, but that would just put her on the defensive. She'd deny everything, probably delete the messages, maybe even flip the situation somehow, and accuse me of invading her privacy. No, confrontation wasn't the answer. Not yet. I needed more. Needed to understand the full picture before I made any moves. Because if she was willing to lie to my cardiologist and hope for my death, there was no telling what else she might be planning. That night, after she fell asleep, I transferred all the photos from my phone to my laptop, organized them into folders, and backed everything up to 3 different locations. Then I started making notes. Dates, times, conversations I remembered that suddenly made more sense in this new context. She had no idea I was building a case against her. Had no idea that her careless mistake with the doctor's office had opened my eyes to everything else. By the time I finally went to bed, it was past midnight. She was sleeping peacefully next to me, completely unaware that her entire plan was falling apart. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, and felt absolutely nothing for her. No anger, no hurt, no betrayal, just cold calculation about what needed to happen next. She'd made her choice when she called that doctor's office. Now I was going to make mine. I gave it 3 days before making my next move. 3 days of acting normal, going to work, coming home, eating dinner with someone who wanted me dead. It was easier than I expected. Once you know the truth, pretending becomes simple. Friday evening, she mentioned going out with friends from work. Some birthday thing at a bar downtown. She'd be home late. Don't wait up. Have fun, I said, not looking up from my laptop. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went to work. We had a shared desktop computer in the spare bedroom, mainly used for paying bills and storing photos. She thought I never touched it. She was wrong. I started with the browser history. She'd been careful to clear it regularly, but not careful enough. Buried in the cache files, I found searches from the past 6 weeks. How long does high blood pressure take to cause heart attack? Signs of heart attack versus panic attack difference. Life insurance payout timeline after death. Can stress cause cardiac arrest? Widow benefits Social Security. Each search was like another piece falling into place. She wasn't just hoping I'd die. She was researching it, planning for it, counting on it. I took screenshots of everything, added them to my growing evidence folder. Then I checked the documents folder, found a spreadsheet she'd created titled Budget Planning, opened it expecting household expenses. What I found instead was a detailed breakdown of my life insurance policy, death benefit amount, payout terms, beneficiary information. She'd even calculated the monthly income she could generate from investing the payout. Below that, another section, CC debt to clear. 3 credit cards I'd never heard of, totaling $43,000. All in her name alone, but she'd listed them under immediate payoff after settlement. Settlement, not inheritance. Settlement. Like this was a business transaction. I photographed every page of that spreadsheet. In another folder, I found saved emails. One was from her appointment with that estate lawyer. The consultation notes were attached. She'd asked about whether life insurance proceeds were considered marital property, how quickly beneficiaries typically receive payment, and whether there were any circumstances where a spouse could be denied benefits. The lawyer's response was professional but clear. Life insurance goes directly to named beneficiaries, bypassing probate. As long as there's no evidence of foul play or fraud, payments usually process within 30 days. She'd highlighted that last part. No evidence of foul play. That's when I understood the full picture. The call to my cardiologist wasn't just vindictive. It was strategic. She was trying to establish a pattern, create a paper trail showing I was non-compliant with treatment, reckless with my health, drinking heavily despite cardiac issues. If something happened to me, she wanted documentation that it was my own fault, that she'd even tried to warn my doctor about my dangerous behavior. It was calculated, cold, and it might have worked if Dr. Brennan hadn't known me well enough to question it. I kept digging through her files. Found more emails. These ones to Brielle and another friend named Sloan. They'd been getting increasingly bold over the past 2 months. To Brielle, 3 weeks ago. Trevor says he can't keep sneaking around much longer. His wife is getting suspicious. We need a clean break, but divorcing now means I lose everything and still have all this debt. To Sloan, 2 weeks ago. I know it sounds terrible, but sometimes I think about what would happen if he just wasn't here anymore. Not like I'd do anything, obviously. But cardiac patients have complications all the time. It's not like it would be suspicious. Brielle's response: "You're playing with fire. Delete this message." She hadn't deleted it. To Sloan, 10 days ago. Called his cardiologist's office today. Told them he's been drinking and skipping meds. Maybe if they think he's non-compliant, they'll document it. Just covering bases in case anything happens naturally. Sloan hadn't responded to that one. I sat back in the chair, looking at all the evidence spread across the screen. My wife had been planning my death like it was a project, and she'd been stupid enough to document everything. The affair with Trevor made sense now too. She couldn't leave me without giving up claim to assets, couldn't afford a divorce with that much debt hanging over her. So she decided to wait for nature to take its course, and maybe give nature a little encouragement along the way. The irony was that my blood pressure had been better lately. Dr. Brennan had even mentioned possibly reducing my medication dose at the next appointment. I'd been doing everything right, taking care of myself, following all the protocols. But she didn't know that. She just saw a cardiac patient and dollar signs. I heard a car door slam outside. Checked my watch. She'd been gone less than 90 minutes. Birthday party must have been short. I quickly closed all the files, cleared my recent activity, and walked out of the spare bedroom like I'd just been in there checking something. She came through the front door looking annoyed. "Back already?" I asked. Birthday girl canceled last minute. Whole thing was pointless. She dropped her purse on the counter. "What have you been doing?" "Watching the game. Nothing special." She walked past me toward the bedroom without another word. I heard the shower start up a few minutes later. I went back to the living room and sat down, but my mind was racing. I had everything I needed now. Documentation of the affair, evidence of the false medical report, proof of her researching my death, and her own words admitting she hoped something would happen to me. But I needed to be smart about this. Needed to involve the right people before she realized I knew anything. Monday morning, I called Dr. Brennan's office again. Asked if I could come in that afternoon for a serious conversation. When I got there, I brought printed copies of everything. Every screenshot, every message, every search history entry. Laid it all out on his desk, while Mrs. Hoffman closed the door behind us. Dr. Brennan read through it in silence. His expression got darker with each page. "This is beyond inappropriate," he finally said. "This is dangerous. She's not just lying about your treatment compliance. Based on these messages, she's actively hoping for and possibly trying to facilitate a medical emergency." "I know." He looked at me seriously. "You understand this needs to be reported, not just to protect you, but because this kind of interference with medical care is a crime. And given the context of these messages about hoping for your death, it crosses into something much more serious. What do you recommend? First, we document everything formally in your medical file. Second, we contact the authorities. This isn't a domestic dispute. This is attempted harm through medical sabotage. And third," he paused, "you need to make sure you're safe. I don't know what else she might be planning." I'd already thought about that. Already started making arrangements. "I have a lawyer appointment set for tomorrow," I said, "but I wanted you to see this first. Wanted it documented by someone who can speak to the medical implications." Dr. Brennan nodded. "I'll prepare a formal statement about the false report and how this kind of interference could have affected your treatment. You'll need that for any legal proceedings." I left his office with more than I came in with. I had medical documentation, professional testimony, and a paper trail that would be impossible for her to explain away. Now I just needed to make sure she couldn't do any more damage before everything came crashing down around her. Tuesday morning, I met with a lawyer named Philip Crane. He specialized in family law, but had handled criminal cases before. My brother had recommended him. I walked into his office with a thick folder of evidence and spent 90 minutes laying out everything. He took notes, asked questions, and didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. "This is one of the clearest cases of domestic endangerment I've seen. The false medical report alone is serious. Combined with the documented statements about hoping for your death, we're looking at potential criminal charges." "What kind of charges?" filing a false report with a medical provider, interference with medical treatment, possibly attempted fraud given the life insurance angle. And depending on how the prosecutor views those messages, they might argue attempted harm or conspiracy to commit harm. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Here's what happens next. We file for divorce immediately, citing adultery and cruelty. In this state, fault-based divorce affects asset division significantly. Given her documented affair and actions, she won't get much. And the criminal side, I'll contact the district attorney's office with copies of everything. They'll determine what charges to pursue. Dr. Brennan's statement about medical interference will carry significant weight. By Thursday, things started moving fast. 2 detectives showed up at my workplace during lunch. They'd received the report from the DA's office and needed my statement. We sat in a conference room for 2 hours while I walked them through everything again. Detective Wyatt, a woman in her 40s, seemed particularly disturbed by the messages. She wrote this to her friends? About hoping you'd have a heart attack. Multiple times. Different conversations. And she called your cardiologist's office claiming you were drinking heavily and skipping medication. My doctor has the documentation. I can give you his contact information. They took everything. Made copies of my evidence. Verified my sobriety app. Checked my pharmacy records. Reviewed the bank statements showing the credit card debt she'd hidden. Where is your wife currently? Detective Wyatt asked. At work. She has no idea I know any of this. Keep it that way for now. We need to verify a few things before we move forward. Friday afternoon, I got a call from Philip Crane. The DA is moving forward with charges. They'll be arresting your wife Monday morning at her workplace. They want to do it there rather than your home for safety reasons. What charges? Filing a false police report, criminal interference with medical care, and attempted fraud. The prosecutor wanted attempted murder, but couldn't make that stick without evidence. She actually did something beyond hoping and planning. Monday morning came. I called in sick to work. Couldn't face being there while this happened. Stayed home. Waited for the phone to ring. It came at 10:30. Detective Wyatt, we've taken your wife into custody. She was arrested at her workplace without incident. We've also contacted Trevor Morton at the same company. Turns out he's married too. His wife was very interested in what we had to show her. I felt nothing hearing that. No satisfaction, no anger. Just tired. What happens now? She'll be processed, arraigned, likely released on bail with conditions. There will be a no-contact order issued. You should not go home until we verify she's secured elsewhere. Do you have somewhere you can stay? My brother's place. Good. Stay there tonight. We'll let you know when it's clear. I packed a bag and drove to my brother's house across town. He'd known something was wrong for weeks, but hadn't pushed. Now I told him everything. She tried to kill you, he said when I finished. She tried to create conditions where my death wouldn't look suspicious. Same thing. Maybe it was. Maybe hoping someone dies and planning for it is close enough to murder that the distinction doesn't matter. My phone buzzed with messages all evening. Her friends, some mutual acquaintances, asking what happened, saying they couldn't believe the charges, insisting there must be some misunderstanding. I didn't respond to any of them. Tuesday morning, Philip called again. She made bail, posted by her parents. The no-contact order is in place. She's staying with them while this plays out. The divorce proceedings begin next week. How long will this take? Criminal case, probably 6 months to a year, depending on whether she takes a plea deal. Divorce will move faster since we have documented adultery and cruelty. 3 to 4 months likely. I went back home Tuesday afternoon. The house felt different, empty in a way it hadn't been before. I walked through each room, looking at 6 years of marriage that had turned into this. Found her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. She must have left it there before they arrested her. One last gesture of defiance, or maybe just practicality. I picked it up, looked at it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. Whatever we'd been to each other was over. Had been over long before I knew it. I was just catching up to the truth she'd already accepted. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and paperwork. The divorce moved faster than the criminal case, just like Philip predicted. Her lawyer tried to argue for reconciliation counseling. Philip shut that down immediately with copies of her messages about hoping I'd die. Hard to claim you want to save a marriage when you've been planning your husband's funeral. The asset division was straightforward. The house was in my name only, purchased before we married. She had no claim to it. My retirement accounts, protected. Her credit card debt, entirely her problem. She tried to claim she deserved half of everything anyway. The judge read through the documented adultery, looked at her lawyer, and denied the motion without comment. Trevor's wife filed for divorce 2 weeks after the arrest, took their 2 kids, and moved back to her parents' house 3 states away. Trevor got served with papers at work, same place he'd been carrying on with my wife. Their company launched an internal investigation into the relationship. Both of them got written up for violating workplace conduct policies. Trevor got demoted. My wife got terminated. She tried to fight the termination, claimed it was unfair. They showed her the signed policies she'd violated and told her to leave the building. I heard all this through mutual connections. Didn't seek it out, but people felt compelled to tell me, like they needed me to know she was suffering consequences. The criminal case took longer but moved steadily forward. Her lawyer tried to get the charges reduced, argued that hoping someone dies isn't the same as actually doing something. The prosecutor countered with the false medical report, the documented interference with my treatment, and the clear financial motive. Added up, it painted a picture of someone actively working toward a specific outcome. 3 months after her arrest, she took a plea deal, pled guilty to filing a false report and criminal mischief. The other charges got dropped in exchange for her plea. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. I sat in the courtroom and watched her stand in front of the judge. "Mrs. Walsh, you deliberately contacted a medical provider with false information about your husband's treatment compliance. You did this while simultaneously expressing hope that he would experience a fatal cardiac event. The court finds your actions reprehensible and dangerous." She got 18 months probation, 200 hours community service, $5,000 in fines, and a permanent restraining order. If she violated probation, she'd serve 6 months in county jail. Her parents sat behind her in the courtroom. Her mother cried. Her father stared straight ahead, stone-faced. The divorce finalized 1 week after her sentencing. She got nothing except the debt she'd accumulated and a criminal record. I kept the house, my accounts, and my clean reputation. Dr. Brennan provided a formal letter for the court file documenting her interference and false report. That letter would follow her forever if she ever tried to claim she'd been treated unfairly. For months after everything started, it was over. Completely, definitively over. I changed the locks on the house the day the divorce papers were signed. Threw out everything she'd left behind. Donated her clothes. Trashed her personal items. Erased every trace of her from my life. Her friends stopped reaching out after the sentencing. They'd seen the evidence presented in court, heard the prosecutor detail her plans, watched her admit guilt. Hard to defend someone after that. Trevor moved to another state, took a job with a different company. Last I heard, he was living alone in some apartment complex, paying child support and alimony to his ex-wife. My wife moved back in with her parents. Got a job doing data entry for some small company that didn't do background checks thoroughly. Made barely enough to cover her probation fees and debt payments. Everything she'd planned for, everything she'd hoped to gain by waiting for me to die, gone. And she'd done it to herself. I didn't feel victorious about any of it. Didn't feel much of anything except relieved that it was finished. 6 months after the divorce finalized, I sat in Dr. Brennan's office for my regular checkup. He took my blood pressure, checked my readings, and looked genuinely pleased. "Your numbers are the best they've been in 3 years. Blood pressure is textbook normal. Heart rate is steady. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Just following the protocol," I said. He smiled slightly. "I think it's more than that. Stress has a significant impact on cardiac health. Removing toxic elements from your life can be as effective as medication sometimes." He wasn't wrong. Since she'd been gone, I'd been sleeping better, eating better, actually enjoying my life instead of just going through motions. Work had been good too. Got promoted to senior supervisor 2 months ago. Better pay, better hours, better team. My boss said I seemed more focused lately. I kept up my sobriety. 1,095 days as of this morning. 3 full years without a drink. Started going to the gym 3 times a week. Nothing intense, just enough to stay healthy. My cardiologist approved of that too. The house felt like mine now. Repainted the bedroom. Replaced furniture she'd picked out, made it a space I actually wanted to be in. Had my brother and some friends over for the first game of the season. Normal things that felt good because they were uncomplicated. I'd heard through the grapevine that my ex-wife was still living with her parents. Still working that data entry job. Still making probation payments and chipping away at credit card debt that would take years to clear. Trevor had apparently moved again, this time to some small town in the Midwest. Heard he was working retail management. His ex-wife had full custody of their kids. He got supervised visitation twice a year if he could afford the travel. Both of them had destroyed their lives chasing something that was never going to work out, and they'd done it so thoroughly that there was no coming back from it. Sometimes people asked me if I was angry about what happened. The answer was always no. Anger requires caring, and I didn't care about her anymore. She was just someone I used to know who'd made terrible choices. The criminal record would follow her forever. Every job application, every background check, it would be there. Filing a false medical report and criminal mischief. Not the kind of thing employers overlook. The restraining order was permanent. She couldn't contact me, couldn't come near my house, couldn't reach out through third parties. If she violated it, she'd go straight to jail. I'd moved on completely. She was stuck dealing with consequences that would last years, maybe decades. Dr. Brennan finished his examination and closed my file. I'm reducing your medication dosage. Your levels are stable enough that we can scale back. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll reassess in 3 months. Better health, better job, better life. Everything she tried to take from me, I still had. Everything she'd hoped to gain, she'd lost. I left the medical office and drove home through afternoon traffic. Stopped at the grocery store, picked up ingredients for dinner. Simple routine stuff that felt satisfying because it was mine. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sunset. Quiet house, clear conscience, good health. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother asking if I wanted to catch the game this weekend. I replied yes, told him to bring whoever he wanted. Life had moved forward. I'd moved forward. And she was still back there, stuck in the wreckage of her own making. That was justice enough for me. I didn't need revenge or vindication. I just needed to keep living well, which was exactly what I planned to do. The sunset faded to dusk. I finished my tea and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow I'd go to work, come home, maybe hit the gym. Normal life, good life. The kind of life she tried to cash in on and ended up losing everything for. I didn't think about her anymore except in moments like this, and even then it was just observation. She wasn't part of my story anymore. Just a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake someone's kindness for weakness and their trust for opportunity. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, and I'd learned to protect myself better. Both lessons that would stick.